They sold my engagement ring to fund my sister's yoga retreat in Bali. Then they used my name, without telling me, to remortgage the house I grew up in, just to push through her visa. Hi, I'm Lauren. I wasn't just cut from the will, I was erased from my own family's story until I decided to rewrite it. You know that quiet kind of betrayal? The kind that doesn't shout but slowly deletes you behind closed doors? I didn't make a scene. I made a plan. And when my sister stood on stage, glowing in white, calling it healing, I turned on the lights and told the truth. Before we dive into the story, let me learn a bit about you. If you're a charming lady, please leave the number 1 in the comments, and if you're a dashing gentleman, leave the number 2. This way I can send you a special greeting. Now, let's start the story together. I hadn't thought about the box in weeks, not because it stopped mattering, because it hurt less when I didn't look at it. But that morning, without thinking, I reached for it like I always did. Right hand, second drawer, same soft pull. My body knew before I did. And then it hit me. The box was gone. At first, I just blinked. Then I checked again, slower this time. I pushed the drawer open fully, peeled back the folded tissues, the old candle stub, even the folded socks I hadn't worn since last fall. Still nothing. I checked the other drawers. Kneeling now. Digging through receipts and sweater sleeves and the scattered anchors of my quiet life. I paused only when the silence around me grew too loud to ignore. Not the good kind, the kind that fills every corner like fog. I left the room still barefoot on one foot. The left sock was clinging halfway to my heel. My hand gripped the banister tighter than it needed to as I made my way downstairs. The house wasn't loud, just awake. Somewhere between the dishwasher finishing its cycle and a bird calling faintly outside, I heard the soft click of a magazine page turning. Mom was at the kitchen island sipping coffee from a white ceramic mug. She didn't look up. "Morning," she said. I hovered near the base of the stairs. "Mom," she turned a page. "Do you know where the ring is?" There was a pause, not of shock, just calculation. Then, casually, she said, "Oh, we sold it." The words floated in the air for a moment before I could even grasp them. "What?" "The ring," she said, like she was naming a brand of cereal. "Marissa needed help for her Bali thing. We figured, well, you weren't really wearing it anymore." She still hadn't looked at me. My throat tightened, but not with rage. Something colder, something quieter. Footsteps approached behind me. Dad's voice followed. "You haven't touched it in months, Lauren," he said. "We figured you didn't need it anymore." I turned, and he was standing there with the same even tone he used when explaining tax forms, as if this was practical, logical. "You sold something that wasn't yours," I said, barely hearing my own voice. "Well, technically," he started. "No," I cut in. "That ring was mine. Evan and I picked the diamond together. He had it engraved." Mom sighed like I'd asked her to cancel dinner plans. "It's not like you're still getting married," she said, folding the magazine shut. The chair scraped slightly as she shifted her weight. She was back to sipping. He had collapsed behind a diner the night he called to say he was bringing my favorite pie. They knew that. "He's not forgotten," I said, and my voice cracked on the last word. "Marissa's finding herself," Mom offered, the way people talk about long flights or mild fevers. "That retreat is life-changing." I said nothing. "She doesn't have anything like that," Dad added, "and you weren't using it." I didn't answer. I just turned and climbed the stairs, one sock still clinging, the other foot bare on the cold hardwood. Back in my room, I opened the drawer again, even though I knew. I just needed to see it one more time. The space where the box had been looked wider now, like time had already filled it with absence. And then I saw it. Folded in the back, partially hidden by the drawer's wooden edge, was the navy velvet cloth. It had delicate white daisies embroidered along one side, limp now without weight. I picked it up slowly, sat down on the floor beside the dresser. The stitches had faded only slightly since Evan gave it to me. He once said the daisies reminded him of that road trip through Utah. when they bloomed wild across the motel field right before the rain. I remember laughing as he tried to pick a few, but the stems were stubborn. He said something like, "Maybe that's why you love them." Stubborn flowers, wild and unkept. Back then, I smiled easily. Now I sat still, cloth in hand, legs folded, spine straight. My knees ached a little, but I didn't move. I traced the edge of the fabric like it was a map. I didn't cry. I had cried enough. That kind of grief doesn't spill anymore. It settles into drawers, into corners, into gestures that nobody notices but you. Outside, the light had changed. Still soft, still spring, but I didn't feel it. I whispered to no one. They didn't just sell a ring. I closed the drawer slowly. They sold what's left of me. And for a long while, I sat there, quiet but not numb, because numbness has nothing left. I had something left. I just wasn't sure what it was yet. 2 days passed, but it felt like I was standing still in a room the rest of the world had already left. I hadn't turned on my phone since Friday morning, not out of discipline, just dread. I wasn't ready to see what kind of silence would be waiting for me on the other side of the lock screen, but sometime around mid-afternoon, when the sunlight slipping through the blinds made the dust in the air feel heavier than usual, I reached for it. The screen lit up. Battery low, notifications waiting. And there she was. The first thing I saw was Marissa in a white two-piece set, stretching on a polished wooden deck surrounded by green. Her arms were lifted in perfect alignment, palms tilted upward like she was offering her soul to the sun. Behind her, palm trees blurred into light. The caption read, "Healing is expensive, but so worth it. Thank you to my family for believing in me." A pink heart, a lotus flower, a sparkle emoji. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered, then swiped. Another post and another. A carousel of perfection, gratitude quotes in gold script, photos of her smiling with strangers draped in linen, smoothies the color of amethysts. This is what reclaiming joy looks like. Every word felt like a splinter. There was a clip of her walking barefoot along a garden path, talking to the camera like she was on a first-name basis with serenity. Then a new message blinked onto my screen. Kendra Liu. "Hey, I know it's not really my place, but thought you should see this. Are you okay?" Attached was a short video. I hesitated, then tapped it. Marissa's voice came through first. "Sometimes you have to let go of emotional anchors," she said, sitting cross-legged with a calm I didn't recognize. "Even rings. We carry pain in objects, but healing means setting it down." The audience, somewhere off-screen, responded with warm affirmations. I paused the video. My chest ached in that dull, tired way grief does when it realizes it has nowhere left to land. I placed the phone face down beside me and stared at the ceiling. Evan had chosen that ring for me. Every detail, every etching, the small daisy tucked beneath the stone. He saved for it slowly, thoughtfully. There was nothing accidental about it. Now it was a metaphor, a prop in someone else's breakthrough story. That night at dinner, the air was strangely formal. Mom had set the table with cloth napkins, which she usually only brought out for holidays or guests. The meatloaf was dry. I barely touched it. Midway through the meal, Mom raised her glass, voice light and lifted. "To Marissa," she said, "for her courage, her transformation." Dad clinked his glass against hers. I didn't move. Mom glanced at me. "Aren't you going to toast your sister?" I lifted my fork instead, pushed a green bean around my plate like it might answer for her. She didn't press. I swallowed the smallest bite I could manage. It tasted like cardboard. My throat tightened on the second chew. Afterward, I went upstairs and closed the door quietly. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out an old manila folder with a coffee stain in the corner. Inside were receipts, Evan's email confirming the ring's appraisal, a printed message from his mother after the funeral, and a handwritten birthday card I'd nearly forgotten I'd kept. The ink had faded a little, but his words hadn't. I love how you see people, even when they're too busy pretending you're not there. I opened my laptop. The screen blinked back to life. New folder. Truth first file. Ringappraisal.pdf, then the second. Email evanlast.pdf. I didn't know what I was building. Not yet. But it felt like stacking bricks around something that had been too exposed for too long. Another message buzzed through. Kevin Morales. Heard what happened. I'm not going to pretend I understand all of it, but don't let them own the final word. You still have yours. I read it twice. Then once more. I minimized the folder window, letting the desktop sit in silence. My reflection hovered faintly on the darkened screen. Outside, the sky had deepened into a soft, overripe orange. Somewhere down the street, someone was grilling. The scent of smoke drifted in through the cracked window. It was the first real thing I'd smelled in days. I rested my head back against the chair. They had given my grief a new name. They had dressed it in hashtags and tropical sunsets. They made it digestible. Beautiful. But the truth? The truth was not beautiful. It was bruised, and it belonged to me. I clicked save, then sat very still. Not angry, not broken, just awake. The envelope was already on the table when I walked into the kitchen. It was a plain white rectangle with a gold embossed letterhead, positioned neatly in the middle of my usual place setting, like a napkin for a conversation no one wanted to have. Dad was stirring his coffee, his eyes on the Denver Post like every other Sunday morning. Mom hovered by the stove, pretending to adjust the flame on a burner that was already off. The air smelled faintly of burnt toast and lavender hand cream. I pulled out the chair, sat down, and didn't touch the envelope right away. No one spoke. Then Dad, still not looking at me, said, "You keep going like this, and you'll ruin your own peace." I didn't answer. I just waited. Finally, he folded the newspaper and slid it to the side. "You've been living here rent-free for 2 years. We've done more than most parents would." The words were rehearsed, almost tired. I looked at the envelope. My name wasn't on the outside, just the seal of a local law firm I vaguely remembered from somewhere. Slowly, I broke the seal. The first line was cold. This correspondence confirms that all contents within the property at our address fall under legal ownership of Vivian and Philip Chen. My chest didn't tighten, not this time. I turned the page. There was a highlighted section on refinancing agreements. Another note in the margin, a signature field left blank, except there was my name, already typed in. I looked up. Mom had turned away, busying herself with rinsing a spoon under water that wasn't running. "Is this a joke?" I asked. Dad took a slow sip. "It's standard, just confirmation. The house is in our name." "But my name's here, on the refinance." Silence. I set the papers down and stood, walked slowly through the hallway past the foyer with the crooked family photo and into the garage. Dust settled over every box like a decision no one wanted to make. In the far corner, half hidden behind an old floor lamp and a folded ping-pong table, I spotted it. A gray plastic bin labeled in black Sharpie, Lauren, College. I pulled off the lid. Yearbooks, a deflated soccer ball, a broken necklace chain, and under it all, a manila folder sealed with brittle masking tape. The tape crackled as I peeled it back. Inside was a copy of a second mortgage application, dated 2022, signed electronically. My name was there, listed under co-borrower. No initials, no notice, no consent. I walked back inside, holding the folder like it was something fragile. Mom met me halfway in the hall. Her voice was soft, practiced. "It was for Marissa's visa paperwork. We needed collateral, your family." She said it like that answered everything. I stared at her, not with rage, with the kind of stillness that makes people nervous. "You used my name," I said. Her eyes darted slightly, but her tone never changed. "You were living here. We assumed you didn't ask." Her hands curled slightly at her sides. "We didn't think it would matter." "It does." I turned and walked past her, my steps quiet but deliberate. Back in my room, I laid the document flat on my desk. Then I pulled open the drawer. The velvet cloth was still folded there, deep navy with daisy stitching that had dulled over time. I unfolded it gently and laid the mortgage copy inside, then folded the cloth again, carefully, the way I used to wrap gifts I couldn't afford but still wanted to mean something. I opened my laptop. Folder. Truth. New file. Used Tian without consent. .pdf. Then I opened a blank document, typed the title, Timeline of Misuse.x. I stared at the blinking cursor for a few seconds. Then I wrote the first entry, March 2023. Engagement ring sold without knowledge or consent. April 2023. Name used in second mortgage application without disclosure. I sat back, hands in my lap, breathing evenly. This wasn't rage. This wasn't panic. This was something else. Somewhere outside, a lawnmower buzzed faintly. A dog barked 3 houses down. It was the kind of background noise that made everything feel normal, even when nothing was. They hadn't just taken a ring. They were selling my name like it belonged to them. I closed the laptop, not forcefully, just with intent. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the backyard, where the garden bed still held remnants of the tomatoes I used to plant with Evan, back when I thought this house was mine too. That afternoon I saw Mrs. Abbott, our next-door neighbor, watering her plants. She waved. I managed a smile, the kind that doesn't touch your eyes. She called out, "You okay, sweetie?" I nodded but didn't reply. Some questions don't deserve half answers. Later, after the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I sat at my desk again and reopened the folder. I didn't add anything new. I just looked at the files, let the weight of them settle into my spine. Not to crush me, to ground me. I wasn't collecting proof for them. I was collecting it for myself. Because sometimes, betrayal doesn't break things. It just rearranges the pieces until you can't remember what your name was supposed to mean. The rain had started sometime before dawn, a soft tapping against the window pane that reminded me of the way Evan used to knock on my apartment door. Light, rhythmic, like he was asking permission even when he already had a key. I hadn't meant to open the tab. I was looking through receipts, scanned images of the ring, the mortgage, every signature I never gave. I brushed the laptop's trackpad without thinking, and a browser window sprang to life. It was a podcast. The screen read, Episode 68, Releasing What Hurts, with Marissa Chen. My hand froze. I didn't press play. I didn't need to. Autoplay had already begun. The intro music was soft, familiar. Marissa's voice followed soon after, breathy, controlled, polished like a TED Talk dressed in yoga pants. "I've learned that real healing," she said, "isn't about denial. It's about release. I had to walk away from the grief that didn't belong to me." "I didn't move," she continued. "Some people live in houses built from grief, then blame the wind for shaking the walls." The host chuckled. "That's so vivid." "It's true," Marissa replied. "Pain can become comfortable. It gives people identity, but I chose not to let it define me." I stared at the screen, watching the audio waveform crawl across the timeline like it was spelling out my erasure in real time. "She's talking about me," I whispered. But there was no one in the room to hear it, and that, too, felt familiar. I reached for the mouse. Right-click. Download episode. File name, publicerase.mp3. No anger rose. Not then. Just a slow, methodical awareness that I needed to document this. I opened the folder on my desktop, TRUTH, and began sorting. Ring appraisal, mortgage file, screenshots of captions. Marissa in Ubud captioned with gratitude I'd never received. A PDF of the will my name struck out, and now this podcast. I created a new subfolder, MEDIA, dropped the file in. Then I reached for the side drawer. Inside was a small envelope, yellowed at the edges. I had kept it tucked beneath old bills and blank notepads. Evan's handwriting was unmistakable, leaning right, precise. Inside, a single sticky note, faded but still legible. Don't let them take your voice or your worth. I pressed the note flat against the desk, sat with it for a moment, and then I scanned it. The image joined the others. I labeled it evanvoice.jpg. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt aligned, like I had stepped into a place I had forgotten how to stand. This wasn't rage. It wasn't even grief anymore. It was something quieter, a steady reclaiming. I closed the laptop and exhaled through my nose. Outside, the rain hadn't let up. It softened the world into the kind of gray that made everything else feel louder. Clocks ticking, pipes humming, the shift of a wooden chair leg as I leaned back. Then I heard it. A gentle scrape. Something slid under my bedroom door. I walked over and picked it up. A thick envelope, ivory, embossed. Women's Voices, Gala. You are cordially invited. My name was not on the front, but inside the insert, in bold, elegant font, keynote speaker, Marissa Chen, author, coach, healer. Below that, a tagline, reclaiming power through forgiveness. I stood there, invitation in hand, the podcast still echoing faintly in my ears. Some people get to tell the story first, but that doesn't mean they get to keep it. Redemption makes people feel better, not just the one redeeming themselves, but everyone watching. It gives them a clean ending, a reason to clap. They rarely stop to ask what the redemption cost or who picked up the tab. I arrived before the crowd. The community hall in downtown Sacramento had been transformed. Candles flickered in low glass bowls. White daisies floated in water beneath gold string lights. Someone had folded the napkins into delicate fans. The air smelled like rosewater and catered ambition. No one recognized me. That was the point. I wore a plain black dress with sleeves to my elbows and a neckline that didn't invite comment. My hair was pulled back, not styled. No makeup, just breath and bone. My clutch was soft leather, and I kept it tucked close against my ribs. Inside, wrapped in the velvet cloth, was the envelope, the video, the voice I'd almost forgotten how to use. Marissa entered 20 minutes later like she was descending the stairs of a dream. Her gown was white, floor length, fitted just so. Her hair was swept up in careful curls, a single diamond at each ear. She smiled with the practiced ease of someone who had rehearsed more than just the speech. Mom walked beside her, hand on her lower back like a stage manager cueing a spotlight. Dad trailed a few steps behind, adjusting his cufflinks though he hadn't worn a watch in years. People turned to look. They always did. I stood near the edge of the room, close enough to the AV table to watch the coordinator check her headset and glance at the printed run of show. She was maybe in her late 20s, trying to appear unshaken by the obvious elegance around her. I stepped closer, offered her the sealed envelope. This was pre-cleared, I said quietly. A donor message to play right after the keynote. It's labeled. She blinked, caught off guard by my presence but not threatened by it. She flipped the envelope open, scanned the card inside. Okay, she said. I'll cue it after her last slide. Thank you. The room dimmed a few minutes later. Tables were filled, murmurs quieted into a hush of anticipation. A woman with a gold clip in her hair introduced the keynote speaker with words like bravery, transcendence, and light. Then Marissa stepped onto the stage. Spotlight found her immediately. She took the mic with both hands and began like she was casting a spell. I used to think pain was something to conquer, she said, but healing isn't about winning, it's about releasing. Her cadence was flawless, her pauses perfectly timed. Pain is like an old wedding dress, she said. It doesn't fit, but people keep it anyway. The audience chuckled, soft, affirming, the kind of laugh that comes with approval, not amusement. She went on. Some people define themselves by what hurt them, but I chose to let go. I chose joy. Each line landed like a gospel. Around the room, people nodded, even clapped quietly. Vivian dabbed at the corner of one eye with a tissue. Philip sat straighter, pride tucked neatly into his posture. Marissa thanked the organizers, the donors, the brave women who showed up for themselves. Applause rose like incense. Then it stopped. The screen behind her flickered. The house lights dimmed further. White text appeared against black. In memory of Evan Wallace. The room stilled. Then my face appeared. I sat in a simple room speaking directly into the lens. My name is Lauren Chen. I wasn't supposed to speak tonight. I wasn't even listed in the program. But silence, when misused, becomes complicity. I didn't read from a script. I didn't perform. I just spoke. The ring that funded Marissa's retreat was never hers. It was mine. Designed by my late fiancé, Evan. It was sold without my knowledge, without my consent. The screen shifted. A photo of Evan and me. Sunlight behind us. His arm around my shoulder. The ring visible on my finger. Daisy etched just beneath the stone. They said I wasn't using it, I continued. That grief had expired. That silence meant agreement. Another slide appeared. The mortgage document. My name listed, co-borrower, highlighted. They used my name to refinance the house, said I was family, said it was for Marissa's visa. No one asked. The photo faded into a final frame. White text on black. This gala was funded in Evan's name, not as legacy, as collateral. I ended simply, this is not a confrontation, it's a correction. The screen went black. No music, no fade out, just the soft buzz of breath held too long. Vivian's hand dropped from her tissue. Philip shifted in his seat, jaw clenched but still. Marissa hadn't moved. She was still on stage, hand near the microphone, eyes wide, not with shock she had known, but with something less rehearsed. Exposure. Then the whispers began. She paid for all this? Wait, was that the sister? Evan? Wasn't that her fiancé? I didn't stay for the rest. I walked toward the exit, the clutch pressed close, the velvet cloth inside warm from my palm. The door opened into cold night air. No one followed. That was never the goal. I didn't want applause. I didn't need a standing ovation. I wasn't here for redemption arcs or confessionals lit by candlelight. I just wanted the truth to have a room that couldn't look away. I didn't leave because I hated them. I left because I finally loved myself more. The air in Santa Rosa was different. Softer, maybe. Or maybe it was just the absence of eyes watching for cracks in my silence. I opened the door to the studio at 8:52 a.m. The morning sun filtered through the wide front windows, cutting clean lines across the wood floor. Dust danced in slow spirals near the display cases. Above the door, the new sign read, Blaze and Chen, crafted with memory. It wasn't grand. Nothing about the space was meant to impress. The walls were cream, the fixtures brass. My tools rested on the long bench near the back, pliers, tumblers, heat torch, all lined with a kind of quiet purpose. And in the far right glass case, beneath a focused beam of light, lay the velvet cloth, navy, stitched with white daisies, folded once, clean and exact. Resting on top of it, a silver band, simple, unpolished, a single daisy etched into the inside curve. A bell rang as the front door opened. I turned, gently wiping my hands on the apron tied around my waist. She was in her 70s, maybe more. Small frame, big coat, hands that held a folded photo the way some people hold confession. She looked around, eyes scanning the room like it might whisper back. "I'm looking for something I can wear," she said, "to keep someone with me." I walked over. She unfolded the photo. A young man, maybe late 20s, smiling with his whole face, the kind of smile that lives longer than the person it belonged to. "My son," she said softly. "Passed in 2008. I've had this in my wallet since. I was wondering if... maybe a pendant? Something simple?" I took the photo gently like it might crack. "We'll carry him with care," I said. She smiled, pressed her hand to mine just for a second. That evening, after sweeping the floor and turning off the bench light, I checked my email. The subject line read, "Thought you should know." It was from Mrs. Abbott, the neighbor from Sacramento, the one who always watered her plants in cardigans, no matter the weather. "Lauren, your mom never said anything after the gala, but I helped her with her computer last week. The video, it's still saved on her desktop, titled Just Your Name. She watches it. I read it twice. Then I filed the message into a new folder. Not erased. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some wounds don't need stitching. They just need air." I walked to the front of the shop and flipped the sign to open for the next morning. The glass caught a line of moonlight, and for a moment it shimmered against the daisy stitch beneath the case. Later that week, a little girl came in with her parents. She ran straight to the glass case, nose almost touching the pane. She pointed at the band resting on the cloth. "Who made this one?" she asked. I crouched beside her, smiling. Someone who finally stopped disappearing. And that was all. The little girl didn't know my story. She just saw a ring in a glass case and asked who made it. And somehow, that was enough. Enough to remind me that I hadn't been erased, just rewritten, by my own hands this time. Sometimes, family doesn't apologize. Sometimes they don't change. But we can. We can choose to stop chasing permission to exist. We can choose to build peace, even when it's quiet and lonely at first. Because the truth, once reclaimed, doesn't need to shout to be heard. If this story spoke to you, I'd be honored to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share what you've carried and what you've finally set down.